Do you know how to read school policy documents to identify the critical theory baked into them? Do you know how to figure out if your state is adopting the kind of DEI approach that would lead to some of the divisive lesson plans I've covered on this channel? Well, I'm about to walk you through some documents from New York State that are current. And whether you live in New York State or not, I'm hoping it will help you go to your own state's Board of Education website, look for their current policy, their current statements on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and start to dig into some of these things. I'm going to be highlighting for you some of the terms to look for and telling you what they mean so you can be on top of them and make decisions accordingly about your child's education. So this is from New York State. This is from Chancellor Lester Young, New York State Board of Regents. This is their framework on diversity, equity, inclusion, all right? So the first thing they did, they had an issue for discussion in April, a framework on diversity, equity, and inclusion for New York State schools. It would serve as the basis for adopting a policy statement. Now, you might be wondering, where did I get this? I got this from the New York State Board of Education website, or just the New York State Education website. And from there, you can check into the regents and the board and so forth. You have to go to a separate website to look at each of the individual 688 some odd school districts, from which there are over 2,000, I think at least, or maybe more than that, schools. So, I mean, it's huge, right? But just to point out a couple of things. So this was a framework, and you can see it starts off with, the nation is at such a moment now. With this framework, the board is ready to address the long history of racism and bigotry and the corrosive impact they've had on every facet of American life. You would think the Civil War happened yesterday, or we just passed the Civil Rights Act and we need to start from nothing. The nation is such a moment now. Wow. Are we though? Like, there's a premise nobody asks questions about enough, in my opinion. We just assume that in 2021, we're at such a moment because of the death of one person under the knee of one cop, which was horrible. Do not get me wrong. But I don't know that that means we're at such a moment now as a nation. This long history, so corrosive. Every facet of American life. Have you felt that? And I mean, you might be saying, but you're white. So no, it's not just because I'm white. I think I would have noticed. So this was for discussion. It was going to come before the board for, full discussion in April. Missed it, but it will, it's anticipated that a policy statement will come to the full board in May this month. If you're in New York, heads up. So the New York State Board of Regents Framework on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion in New York Schools, a call to action draft. Now, there are some key points to this call to action, all right? I'm not going to go through all of them. They obviously approach this as though there is such a thing as systemic racism in New York, on New York students, the impact on them. And then we're going to look at the definitions they use, okay? So first of all, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we go. The senseless, brutal killing, a confluence of events has brought us to this point of reckoning. This point of reckoning. Again, like the senseless, brutal killing of Black and brown men and women at the hands of law enforcement. This is the media narrative. This bears no relationship to actual statistical reality. Okay? Because senseless, brutal killing. I mean, again, we have one person we could seriously say that about, and it wasn't race related. The rest, senseless, debatable. Brutal, also debatable. Black and brown, I guess all the white people they killed don't count. Real and enduring racial justice in the face of this inhumanity. This sounds like a pretty bold opinion statement coming from the Board of Regents. Okay? A dangerous spike in violence aimed at Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, fueled in part by lies that attempt to link the Asian community with the creation and spread of the coronavirus. I could read this whole thing, but I think you guys get the gist of the New York State Board of Regents is using media narratives to formulate a call to action that will result in a policy to put curriculum into schools. These national, the terrible toll that COVID-19 is at all our lives, et cetera. And then, of course, we single out how it's predominantly impacting Black, Latinx, Asian, Indigenous, and poor student populations, et cetera, et cetera. Now they admit to learning loss, but they don't admit to learning loss when the unions are talking. These national tragedies have combined to create a perfect storm, a storm that's powerful enough to propel us beyond the systemic racism that has come to define America's institutions. Y'all realize you've been running the public schools since the 1880s, right? You've been in charge. Like, hello? There have been teachers' unions in New York since, like, forever. So, at least since there was the since a Department of Education, if not longer. So, who's been running the schools? The systemic racism code define all of America's institutions? Like, again, that's an opinion. Do I need to even go through the rest of the document? I could hang it up now, end the video, and say, look, here we go. The critical justice, critical social justice, critical race theory is right there in the first document. I don't even need to take you to the rest of it or the definitions. This is a narrative. Okay? Policing, education, healthcare, employment, housing, access to capital, and almost every conceivable brand. Systemic racism implies, y'all, that there are laws. This is systemic. Why this year? Why suddenly? Why not the 8 years that Barack Obama was president? Was this not even mentioned? None of this was mentioned. Maybe because it would have sounded completely ridiculous when we had a Black president who didn't do really much of anything that I could see except stoke the fires of unrest in St. Louis and not bother to circle back and let people know that there didn't appear to be a racial component at all, never mind a crime of murder involved in Michael Brown's killing. Okay. So let's skip ahead, shall we, to the definitions, because this is just I can't even with this. All right. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Board of Regents and the New York State Education Department have come to understand, I wonder how that happened, that the results we seek for all our children can never be fully achieved. See, first it was money. And then, of course, they got money. And so now it can, no, you know what? We've been doing it all along. We were mindlessly racist, I guess. Can never be fully achieved unless we refocus every facet of our work, every single one, through an equity and inclusion lens. Are these the lenses that distort reality and completely disregard all statistical fact? See also New York State's Every Student Succeeds Act Plan. I'm not even going to go there. This understanding has created an urgency around promoting equitable opportunities that help all children thrive. New York State understands that responsibility of education is not only to prevent the exclusion of historically silenced, erased, and disenfranchised groups, but also to assist in the promotion and perpetuation. So we're promoting and perpetuating cultures, languages, and ways of knowing. Is this the role of school? What happened to parents? What happened to community groups? Why is it the public school's job and our tax dollars' job to promote other languages, other cultures, and perpetuate those? No, I'm sorry. Those are your responsibility. We are a melting pot. This is the United States of America. It is not our job to promote your tribe, your culture, your ethnicity, whatever. No, there's literally no other there's no other country on earth where you could plop down and say, I want the taxpayers of this country to promote the culture of origin of me. Why not? Why wouldn't you do that? No, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that because if you're going to have state-sponsored stuff, it's not supposed to promote specific other tribes and cultures. That is not American. That's not what we do here. So this idea that they've been devalued, suppressed, and imperiled by years of educational, social, political, economic neglect, it's not the job of the political institutions or the educational institutions to promote them. That's not the proper role of public education. It's not oppression or even neglect to not promote your particular little tribe in the public school classroom. The reframing of this as oppression is ludicrous and super ironic, considering that the public schools were created for the purpose of assimilation and out of xenophobia. So they went a step farther in the other direction and said, we're going to educate these people so that they have nothing left of their prior culture, specifically Catholic, specifically Jewish, and specifically Black, but they were segregated. So that was a whole other issue. But never was it suggested anywhere that they should go 180 degrees the other way and promote this stuff. How about just do your job? Teach these kids the basic skills they need to function in our society and let them personally perpetuate and promote their own culture. This is insane. The act of defining is often the direct attempt to make something definite, distinct, or clear. Yeah, that's kind of the point. It is really important to define your terms when you are spending taxpayer dollars. Yes, it's important in general, but it's especially important when you're spending our money. They act like it's, it's just, our purpose is not to restrict, but to provide clarity to the concepts of diversity, equity, inclusion. They're leaving the door open to change this definition if enough of us pipe up and complain that we think this is divisive. That's what that is. That's what you should be hearing there. We're not restricting it. We reserve the right to change it down the road. These definitions are not intended to be exhaustive. Yeah, you just said that. Rather, they are meant to be foundational. They love that word, foundational. Foundational. Nicole Hannah-Jones refers to how racism and white supremacy was foundational to the creation of our founding documents. It was foundational. The definitions listed below can be credited to the University of California, Berkeley Center for Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity and the University of Houston Center for Diversity and Inclusion. So if you're wondering where they all get these terms, there you go. There you go. The definitions can be credited to this university on the other side of the country. It has nothing to do with our population here, but there. Diversity includes, but is not limited to race, color, ethnicity, nationality, religion, socioeconomic status, veteran status, education, marital status, language, age, gender, gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, mental or physical ability, genetic information, and learning styles. Wow. When thinking about diversity, it is important to note that the terminology has broadened over time. Yes, I did just notice that. For example, 10 years ago, diversity was synonymous with racial and ethnic minorities. Today, people were once referred to as minorities are now considered part of the global majority. Thank you for acknowledging that fact. Thank you so much. But you still want to use their pain to amass power and money, so you're just going to reframe what they are. I got it. Also, aspects such as socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability may be considered when referring to diverse populations. With this broadened definition, inclusivity of someone's varied identities, there it is, guys, identities, critical social justice has entered the room, is in the building. Equity, the guarantee of fair treatment, good luck with that. Of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement I'm sorry. What? The guarantee, skip that shit, and advancement. The guarantee of advancement. Interesting. The guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all, whether they earned it or not, while striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of all groups. Groups, not individuals, groups. The full participation of all groups. Did you know that people participate in education as a group? I didn't. The principle of equity acknowledges that there are historically underserved and underrepresented populations and that fairness regarding these unbalanced conditions is needed to assist equality in the provision of effective opportunities to all. Again, with the groups, not individuals. At its core, equity requires that we create the opportunity. Advancement, create the opportunity, advancement, catching on? For all students to succeed, would love a definition for that word, and thrive, that one too, in school, no matter who they are, where they live, where they go to school, or where they come from. Now we're going to come back to this culturally responsive thing in just a minute. Inclusion, authentically bringing traditionally excluded individuals and or groups into processes, activities, and decision policy making in a way that shares power shares power. So it's about power, not authority, not responsibility, not accountability, power. Critical social justice. And ensures equal access to opportunities and resources. This is your Marxism right here. Okay? Through this framework, the Board of Regents asserts to its expectation that all school districts will develop policies that advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. That all school districts will develop policies that advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, like I just read it, and that they will implement such policies with fidelity and urgency. Fidelity means, as we just described it, loyal to these terms, and urgency right now before the parents can figure out what's going on. Okay? So we're just going to skip the rest of this. I'll put the link to this in the description box so you can go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And we're going to go to the culturally responsive sustaining educational framework. And I'm not going to go through all of this mess, just a few key points to show you some key words. Okay? Look at this hand, all the hands. All right. So, culturally responsive sustaining education. We have all the people, and they're all proud of all the things. The introduction page, blah, 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 all the stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead. For more than a century, education providers throughout the United States have strived and struggled to meet the diverse needs of America's children and families. A complex system of biases and structural iniquities is at play, deeply rooted in our country's history, culture, and institutions. This system of inequity, which routinely confers advantage and disadvantage, confers. Based on linguistic background, gender, skin color, and other characteristics must be clearly understood, directly challenged, and fundamentally transformed. Where have we heard that? Those words, people, are fundamentally transformed. Into what? They never tell you, do they? The New York State Education Department has come to understand, again with the come to understand. Come to understand. It's like they were, come over here and understand. That the results we seek, again with this, okay? It's created an urgency around promoting equitable opportunities to help children thrive. New York State understands that the responsibility of education is not only to prevent the exclusion of historically silenced, erased, and disenfranchised groups. You know, I didn't really realize that was like at all the point of it. I thought it was to educate the population of children, but also to assist in the promotion and perpetuation of cultures. Were you aware of that? Did you know that public school was to assist in the promotion and perpetuation of cultures, languages, and here's the critical social justice ways of knowing. Did you know there were more than one ways of knowing things that have been devalued, suppressed? It's suppressed that we didn't really think that 2 + 2 = 5 was a way of knowing that we wanted to celebrate or promote. By the way, that's what they mean. And imperiled by years of educational, social, political, economic neglect. Again, this language is absolutely textbook boilerplate critical social justice. Okay? So the Board of Regents directed the Office of P-12 Education to convene a panel of experts, engage with stakeholders, except parents, and develop from the ground up a framework for culturally responsive, sustaining education. The New York University Metropolitan Center for Research on Equity and the Transformation of Schools, under the leadership of Dr. David Kirkland, drafted a robust guidance document that served as a springboard for this initiative. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the things. Okay? I'm not going to go through every single thing, but I do want to show you some key points. All right. This is the New York State guidelines for culturally responsive sustaining education are grounded in a vision of education system that creates students who experience academic success. Students are prepared for rigor and independent learning. Students understand themselves as contributing members of an academically rigorous, intellectually challenging school and classroom community. Sounds good, doesn't it? Students demonstrate an ability to use critical reasoning, take academic risks, and leverage a growth mindset to learn from mistakes. Students are self-motivated, setting and revising academic personal goals to drive their own learning and growth. Sounds fine, doesn't it? Okay. Students who are Students who are socio-politically conscious and socio-culturally responsive. You lost me now, because all this sounds pretty good, but now students acknowledge the limitation of their own perspectives. They have empathy for others while they appreciate and respect others' differences. That's fine. They demonstrate cooperation and teamwork using active listening and communication skills to resolve conflict. They use interpersonal skills to build and maintain strong relationships, including those along lines of difference in their class and school communities. All layers of the environment in which students learn, blah, 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 affirm and value the various aspects of students' cultural identities, race, ethnicity, age, gender, sexual. Again, with the cultural identities. They're going to call them out, guys. Role models in the classroom, school, family, and community recognize students' strengths and offer opportunities for students to grow and learn along their cultural identities. But here it is. All of this that sounded so good is undone right here. Students who have a critical lens through which they challenge inequitable systems of access, power, and privilege. So all of this is going to be geared towards this. Rest assured. The rigor is going to be applied to this. The self-motivation is going to be applied to this. What is this? Students bring a critical lens to the world they don't know about yet as they study, not after they study, not after they know about it, not after they're all the way up in college or grad school. No. As they study, they're going to be tearing down, critiquing, finding fault with. That is insane. Why do you find fault with things you know nothing about? And contemporary conditions of inequity, which will, of course, be told to them. They'll be told to them because they don't know all of them. They don't live in all of them. And even I, a 55-year-old woman who's lived a little while and seen a few things, don't know what the school is going to define as a condition of inequality or inequity, and learn from historically marginalized voices, which will be handpicked by the school and the Board of Regents and all of these wonderful experts to, let them know that these are conditions of inequity, which will they'll be redefined on the fly, of course, as needed. Students learn about power and privilege in the context of various communities and are empowered as agents of positive social change. Basically, you should just read this as students will become activists. So all of this, students will be pushed rigorously to become activists. Students will spend a whole lot of time being very, very conscious of their identities, and then they will become activists because they'll be really pissed off. By the time they get done with all this critical consciousness junk, they'll be really pissed off. And then, of course, it goes into what that even means. Okay. Socio-politically conscious demonstrate excellence by being inclusive-minded and asset-focused. Asset, stuff they don't have and other people do, otherwise known as envy. Identify and critically examine both historical and contemporary power structures, which, of course, they will be told by their teachers. Whether they're real or not remains to be seen. Because, again, privilege, power, as they define them. Reflect, honor, value, and center various identity perspectives. In other words, we're going to be supremacists and promote certain cultures that they think are okay as assets and policies in practice. Engage in critical conversations. That means struggle sessions. Recognize that personal, cultural, and institutionalized discrimination creates and sustains privileges for some while creating and sustaining disadvantages for others. So what they're going to do is flip them around. They don't have a problem with them creating and sustaining privileges for some. It's just the some they want to pick. Yeah, they're going to do that because Kendi has said so. He said that we need to discriminate today to make up for discrimination in the past. So we're going to identify what those privileges are, and we're just going to turn them around. Socio-culturally responsive, commit to understanding the role of culture and education as flexible, local, and global. They're not citizens of the United States anymore, guys. Act as agents of social change to redress historical and contemporary oppression, premise being it exists. And the student's role is to redress it. Not the government, not by voting. The students, the K-12 students are going to be these agents of change and, redressing contemporary oppression. Build alliances across differences. Allies to eradicate all forms of discrimination. That basically means I'm going to guilt you until you support my cause. And if you don't, I'm going to call you a racist. Engage current and historical issues. Interesting. From what perspective? The perspective of the teacher. Practice mutual respect for qualities and experience that are different from one's own, unless they're white. So you get the gist, right? I mean, we know what this all means. It's code language. It is code language. Oh, wait. No, I totally forgot, you guys. Oh, there's one more thing. Wait. There's a tree. There's a tree. I got to show you the tree. Where's the tree? The cool tree. Here it is. This CRT framework helps educators create student-centered learning environments that affirm racial, linguistic, and cultural identities, prepare students for rigor and independent learning, develop students' abilities to connect across lines of difference. It's getting to be like a religious dogma with these words. They just repeat over and over and over again. Elevate historically marginalized voices and empower students as agents of social change. welcoming and affirming environment, collective responsibility to learn about student cultures and communities. We really need to hear from you. We really need to hear from you. You need to declare your identities, and you need to, affirm everyone else's identities, and you're not allowed to disagree. And if we see you looking like, strange looks on your face, we're going to treat that as a microaggression. So that's not very welcoming. We have collective responsibility here. Social emotional learning programs. We're going to mind meld you. We're going to, yes, it's called brainwashing. Inclusive curriculum and assessment. This is another way of saying we're going to dumb down our grading system. Students are co-designers of the curriculum. Yeah. Resources written and developed by racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse perspectives. Yeah. Instructional strategies that adapt to diverse learning styles. That's all just a way of saying we're not really going to have the same standards because we have different ways of knowing now. High expectations and rigorous instruction. First thing on the list, student-led civic engagement. That's not really what I think of when I think of rigorous instruction. Is it what you think of? Student-led civic engagement? Critical examination of power structures? Is that what you think of when you think of rigorous instruction? Project-based learning and social justice issues? Is that what you think of when you think of rigorous instruction? How about student leadership opportunities? They're K through 12. Ongoing professional learning and support, diversity, equity, inclusion training, examining implicit bias and interrogation of beliefs and assumptions, struggle sessions, support in aligning curriculum and instruction to the histories, languages, and I can't do this anymore. It's like, guys, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So I hope that you found this helpful, if not completely depressing, which you probably also found it. But anyway, that's New York State. Welcome to 2021 in America. I'm sorry, not America. What are we now? I don't know what we are anymore. So please share, comment, like, subscribe. It helps me continue to bring content like this to you. Join my locals community where we can dive into this in much more detail. And that's all I have to say about